It's Friday, July 17th, 2009, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.norml.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Good day, Stashers, and welcome to the podcast. Got this one up on the net pretty early today because while you're listening to this, I am backstage at the Portland Coliseum interviewing the band Slightly Stupid for the Blazed and Confused tour. And with any luck, maybe we'll get a word from Snoop Dogg himself. Pictures and interviews will be online for the Daily Audio Stash next week, so stay tuned for those. Also, we're really excited about the news of the NORML live show that's going to be appearing starting on Labor Day weekend every Saturday from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern, 6 to 8 Pacific. That's right, live talk radio, 2 hours devoted to nothing but marijuana and ending this stupid prohibition. We're seeking out initial sponsors and advertisers for the NORML live show. If you're interested, send me an email at stash@norml.org. This is going to be a big online channel. Already we're hearing of different celebrities who are going to have their shows on the same channel. Just got confirmation of Jackie the Joke Man Martling, who's going to be having a show there. Also, we want to let you know the show is going to be promoted through the terrestrial radio stations owned by CBS. That's like 1010 Winds and WCBS. They'll be giving commercials for the channel. So we plan on getting a whole lot of coverage here. We're also sending out advertising requests to the anti-drug groups, the Partnership for the Drug-Free Americas of the world, in hopes that they try to boycott CBS and get us a little bit of earned media. This is going to be a lot of fun, so stay tuned for further developments. I also want to recognize the new chapter in Georgia NORML. David Clark's down there doing a great job as executive director. Tanya Burgess is working on that board as well. They produce an online newsletter, the Georgia NORML Bud Bulletin. Comes through my inbox every week. Man, what a fantastic newsletter they've put together here. Very, very professional looking. If you're interested in this kind of stuff as a NORML chapter, you need to be on the affiliates list. That's right, affiliates at norml.org. It's an invitation-only list, so send me an email at stash@norml.org if you need to get your chapter on the list. This is the place online where normalizers can communicate with each other and not have to reinvent the wheel. If you're interested in doing something from petitioning, initiatives, throwing hemp fests, whatever it might be, there's someone on that list who's already done it. Learn from their experiences. Join the affiliates list today. Now, coming up on your Daily Audio Stash, we begin with your hemp headlines with good news from the nation's capital as the House votes to pass a bill that may allow the district to begin considering medical marijuana again. The Boston Herald newspaper has some news out about the unenforceability of Question 2 and how that's stymieing police efforts to collect fines. The country of Mexico has made a statement that they will not negotiate with the drug traffickers, possibly leading to more violence and maybe a quicker end to this prohibition. And important news from Denver, Colorado. On Monday, there will be a hearing that may determine the fate of that state's burgeoning dispensary movement. So check that out in our hemp headlines. Today is an odd Friday of the month, and every other Friday we visit with Steve Bloom from CelebStoner.com for our Celebrity Entertainment Report. He's got a fascinating look at the intersection of the careers of Michael Jackson and Tommy Chong. You may not know this hidden history in the cannabis community, so check that out in our Celeb Stoner Entertainment Report. In our Daily Toker Tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, it's a wrap on Fridays, so we'll get some great music there for you. And in our second interview segment, Cannabis Community, we speak with Danny Breeden, an author and former correctional officer who's written the new free book, Marijuana, Prisons or Profit, available online at marijuanaprisonsorprofit.com. You'll be surprised about the opinions of this former prison guard with regards to marijuana growers. All that and more coming up now on your NORML Daily Audio Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML Daily Audio Stash, Hemp Headlines. House passes Bill 219 to 208 that allows medical marijuana in District of Columbia, needle exchange, and vouchers. The House began debating a bill, the Financial Services and General Government Appropriations Bill, Thursday, that dances on almost every nerve in the social conservative body politic, touching on everything from abortion to needle exchange, gay and lesbian rights, charter schools, and medical marijuana. The Republican committee report says, quote, "We strongly oppose these changes. We do not believe increasing the availability of abortions or medical marijuana will improve the District of Columbia," end quote. Representative Eleanor Holmes Norton, the non-voting delegate from the district, took GOP members of Congress to task in their presumption to assert authority over D.C.'s home rule. Norton said, quote, "Your lip service to local control, the time for that has run out. We have profound disagreements on some issues, from abortion to vouchers. Go home and deal with them there. Allow us to deal with these issues in our own way as a local jurisdiction. I appreciate that the Rules Committee has indeed respected our citizenship, and I demand that other members of Congress do so as well," end quote. So, is medical marijuana coming to the district? Well, they passed their initiative in 1998, but it wasn't allowed to be counted, the votes that is, and no money was allowed to be spent on implementing the initiative thanks to the Barr Amendment, which this vote would remove from the appropriations. This still has to go through the Senate and become law, so we're a few steps away from seeing whether or not medical marijuana can be legal in the district. And there's still some legal questions as to whether the vote that occurred would just become law or if they would have to go re-vote on the matter. Regardless, the citizens of the District of Columbia supported medical marijuana by 69% in 1998, so there's no doubt now that they would pass it by a similar or even larger margin. So again, stay tuned to the stash for more details. Boston Herald laments police inability to collect pot fines or lock up tokers. From the Boston Herald. Thumbing their noses at the state's lax new pot law, Bay State stoners are brazenly lighting up in front of cops and then refusing to pay fines, leading some frustrated police chiefs to all but give up the fight. Local police report widespread defiance of the 6-month-old law, and a Herald review shows a vast majority of potheads cited by cops blowing off their $100 fines. All told, a staggering 83% of 415 tokers cited in Boston since the law took effect in January have refused to pony up the $100, a Herald review shows. In Braintree, 15 of 28 citations went unpaid, while in Brookline, 26 of 33 blew off the fines. Somerville Deputy Chief Paul Upton said his officers are now writing few, if any, citations, in part because enforcing the law costs more money than it's worth. Upton said, quote, "If we send an officer to court, it's going to cost us $250. We're not getting a lot of citations written." End quote. Meanwhile, in Braintree on Monday night, police spotted a suspected perv smoking pot in a car filled with coils of rope, a pair of handcuffs, and bottles of NyQuil. But they had to let the man go, even though he was awaiting trial on child sexual assault charges. Said Deputy Chief Russell Jenkins, quote, "Had the law not been changed, he absolutely would have been placed under arrest." End quote. The Boston Herald, since day one, has been opposed to the decriminalization measure in Massachusetts that was supported by almost 2 out of 3 voters. The reason people supported Question 2 in the first place was that they felt police in the Bay State had better things to do than to haul pot smokers in front of a judge at $250 worth of an officer's time per pop. Now, in the penultimate graph, we get a ridiculous and offensive implication about marijuana and pedophilia. Have they been reading John English in Boston? First of all, let's suppose the suspected perv, nice journalistic integrity there, had been sitting in his car smoking a cigarette. The police would have nothing to bust him for, as possession of rope, handcuffs, and NyQuil, even for those accused of, not proven to be, child molesters. Is it really Chief Jenkins and the Herald's assertion that the only way he can keep Braintree safe from child molesters is if they choose to smoke pot in public, and he has the right to lock them up for it? Does he really mean that nationwide, 872,721 marijuana smokers per year have to have their lives ruined so we can catch the 4 or 5 suspected but not proven child molesters in that group? As for this toothless decriminalization, are the people of Massachusetts upset about this? Do they feel they've been duped, thinking they'd reap $100 for every pothead caught, and are now gnashing their teeth over all the stoners who are getting off scot-free? The Herald asked about this in an online poll. Is the $100 fine for smoking pot a good idea? Out of 3,477 votes, 7% say yes, give it a chance to work. 3% say no, double the fine. 19% say no, go back to it being an arrestable offense. And 70% say just legalize pot and save us all the trouble. DEA inadvertently speeding prohibition's end. From Isria.com. The U.S. anti-drug agency supported the Mexican government's position of rejecting any dialogue or pact with organized crime. The Drug Enforcement Administration, or DEA, approved the Mexican government's position of not negotiating with drug traffickers or criminal groups whose only possible destination is prison. Mexican President Felipe Calderón, quote, is right not to make agreements with criminals. Criminals must be put in prison, period, end quote, declared DEA Head of Intelligence Operations Anthony Placido. Placido added, quote, from our point of view, President Calderón is a hero who is fighting head-to-head with criminals. We are going to help, end quote. At the same time, Placido expressed the DEA's concern over the violence carried out by the drug cartels, who feel threatened by the operations undertaken by Mexico's police and military forces. The DEA officials described drug cartels as a threat to both Mexico and the United States, adding that the increase in violence reflects the advances of both countries in, quote, interrupting the activities, end quote, of these organizations. The DEA may inadvertently be speeding an end to the prohibition by encouraging the Mexican government to not negotiate with the cartels. Apart from legal, low-cost marijuana sales to adults, the only thing that could bring an end to the cartel murders is a deal made with the Mexican government to turn a blind eye to cartel operations. While the government refuses the possibility of this, the murders will continue, and the pressure on non-smokers in the U.S. to demand an end to the murders in any way possible will continue to grow. The DEA's support for the Mexican government's position will serve to minimize the possibility of the government rescinding on this. The only element left now is for non-smokers in America to see that the prohibition is causing the cartel murders. Reputable organizations need to be encouraged to conduct sound research into the connection between the prohibition and the cartel murders, with the purpose of generating studies proving a statistically significant correlation between the two. Findings like this from reputable sources will make front-page news across the country and become a powerful weapon in generating support amongst non-smokers for bringing an end to the prohibition. Widespread knowledge of this connection among the general public will give non-smokers a compassionate reason to support an end to the ongoing suffering and brutal murders of so many people. It'll also reveal to them just how the prohibition is putting their own families in danger, not only from errant SWAT raids, but also from being the accidental target of home invasions and revenge killings by the cartels. 3,000 people alive right now will be tortured, murdered, and beheaded by the cartels before Christmas as a direct result of the federal marijuana prohibition. Monday hearing may determine fate of Colorado's medical marijuana dispensaries. From the Denver Daily News. The health department on Monday will consider making things a bit more complicated for Andy Cookston's cannabis medical caregiving operation, which he operates with his wife Lori. On Monday, the Board of Health will vote on a proposal that would limit caregivers to 5 patients, as well as require them to provide so-called significant care like cooking, cleaning, and scrubbing toilets. Quote, that means you'll have another illegal market to deal with, starts Cookston, still standing in the printing portion of his store. If they limit growth, a guy like me is not going to let down 15 people in wheelchairs. I'm not going to do it. End quote. The whole issue has Brian Vicente, executive director of pro-medical marijuana group Sensible Colorado, smoking mad. Quote, could you imagine if your doctor instructed you to use a medication, but when you went to pick it up at the pharmacy, he said, sorry, I've already helped 5 people today, end quote, asked Vicente, who also serves as counsel to Cookston. Dispensaries have shot up across Colorado since President Obama took office and eased federal crackdowns on medical marijuana growing and dispensing operations. It's estimated that more than 40 dispensaries are operating legally across Colorado, according to Vicente. Of those, at least 10 are in Denver. Many more operate underground. And perhaps even worse, some of the more than 7,600 patients seek street dealers. Concerns are being raised that if the health department imposes the new regulations, more patients would look to the street, or certainly to dispensaries forced to grow underground. Board of Health public hearing on proposed changes to the medical marijuana registry program takes place on Monday at 9 a.m. at the Tivoli Student Union Conference Room 250, 900 Aurora Parkway on the Aurora campus. Much of this controversy stems from the definition of a caregiver. What does it mean to give care to a seriously sick or disabled person? The state wants you to believe that caregiving is akin to being a certified nurse's assistant, taking vitals, dispensing medicine, cooking, cleaning, bathing the patient, and so on. And if you want to be picky about it, that is the proper definition in a historical context. But with medical marijuana, caregiver is a placeholder term for someone who assists in the growing, preparation, and dispensing of medical marijuana, because the term you would normally use for such a person, pharmacist, is unavailable to us due to the federal prohibition on cannabis. Or the other term you might use, dealer, is inappropriate because the grower and seller of the cannabis is doing so legally and not for profit. I think much of this controversy could have been avoided if we had been able to pass medical marijuana initiatives with the term gardener. Obviously, the marijuana needs to be grown, harvested, and packaged before the patient can use it, which really means the only thing the caregiver is giving care towards is a plant, not a person. Now, to be fair, most of the Colorado dispensary owners I met in Aspen are actually providing holistic caregiving services, like massage therapy, counseling, grocery services, and so on. I say a rose by any other name would still smell as sweet. Whether we call them caregivers, growers, or dispensaries, they are providing a critical healthcare service. And as such, the Colorado Health Department should avoid getting caught up in the distinctions of terminology and focus on the good being done by the caregivers involved. Accept that the people of Colorado support medical access to marijuana, accept that some sort of business, underground or legit, is going to arise to serve that need, and work with the caregivers to craft sensible and responsible ordinances that protect the patients and the state.
I'm a doctor.
I'm a lawyer.
I'm a journalist.
I'm a student.
I'm a teacher.
I'm a representative.
I have cancer.
The outdated laws of prohibition are more dangerous than the plant itself.
I lost my scholarship.
I was fired.
20 million arrests since 1965. This is getting ridiculous.
Our prisons are overcrowded with non-violent offenders.
We have the opportunity to change.
This is costing our country billions of dollars.
Making my family and I fight in a courtroom is difficult enough when I'm already fighting through chemotherapy.
There's no reason to be scared by tradition anymore.
We can stop this.
We can stop this.
We are the American people,
We can stop this.
and you have our support.
We're old,
Young.
straight.
Gay.
We're every race and nationality.
And we're not going to give up.
You can tax it.
You can regulate it.
Apply age restrictions.
You can create millions of new jobs.
We can save our economy.
President Obama?
It's time for legalization.
Legalization.
Yes.
We.
Can.
This has been a public service announcement for NORML.
When you get your targets and talk nice.
Marijuana culture is infused throughout America and the world. As we round out the week, we take a look at the 420 phenomenon in movies, TV, music, and sports with former High Times editor and author of Pot Culture, Steve Bloom, in our CelebStoner.com entertainment news. Time to go all the way back to New York City and visit with Celeb Stoner Steve Bloom for our Celebrity Entertainment Report. Steve, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Russ, how are you?
I'm doing great. We've had a lot of things break down in the last couple of weeks that we should get around to talking to. And one of the things that I caught on the CelebStoner.com, you've got a lot of guest bloggers there who are writing some really incredible pieces. And with the death of Michael Jackson, that of course everyone's been talking about for the past couple of weeks, you had some pieces that I think might really surprise and shock some people about Michael Jackson. So why don't you give them a little taste of that?
Well, our good friend Tommy Chong submitted several blog pieces. He's been doing a little writing for Celeb Stoner. He likes the site. And when Michael Jackson died, I came home that night, and in my inbox, in my email, was a piece written by Tommy, and it was pretty surprising. I mean, we headlined it, Tommy Chong Remembers Michael Jackson, basically, and it was about how before Tommy was a comedian, he was a musician. And, if you've seen him tour, if you've watched him in the movies, you always see him with a guitar playing, acid rock kind of guitar solos and blues and stuff like that. Well, he was a musician going back, and he was in this group called Bobby Taylor and the Vancouvers, which was signed to Motown back in the late 60s. Well, lo and behold, back in 1968, when Bobby Taylor and the Vancouvers were touring around the U.S., and they were actually doing a run at the Regal Theater in Chicago with Jerry Butler as the headliner, and who was on the bill but the Jackson 5. And the Jackson 5 were the third group on the bill, or maybe the fourth or whatever, but they were the unknown group on the bill. They had not been signed. Motown didn't know anything about them. And Bobby Taylor, took a liking to the Jacksons and the family and everybody, and he took them sort of under his wing. And then because, they were signed to Motown, he, brought the Jacksons to the attention of Berry Gordy and the Motown people. And then the rest is history. Now, the first Jacksons album that came out says Diana Ross presents the Jacksons. Didn't say Bobby Taylor because Bobby Taylor wasn't so famous. So it was Diana Ross presents. You know, Motown was sort of famous for, you know, these sort of stunts back then where, you know, it may not be the truth, but this is what we're going to tell you. And so in this particular case, now when you think about, you know, the history of, you know, the Jackson 5, the Jacksons and Michael Jackson, who really discovered them, you know, when Michael died, you know, everybody was going on television, people like Suzanne DePass, who was one of the early Motown people, saying, you know, she discovered them, and nobody really wants to give the credit to Bobby Taylor. And if Tommy's telling the story accurately, you know, Bobby Taylor and the Vancouvers, with Tommy Chong as the guitar player, discovered the Jacksons and the Jackson 5, and hence Michael Jackson. And Tommy sort of wants to take a little sort of credit for it because Tommy co-founded the Vancouvers. You know, Tommy was living in Vancouver when they were discovered, believe it or not, by Diana Ross back in like 1967 or so, and they had like one hit song that's called Does Your Mama Know About Me? And it's a song co-written by Tommy Chong, and it's about an interracial relationship, was, you know, very kind of taboo back at that time. And Tommy was the sort of one of the black guys in the group. And Tommy's always talked about, you know, joking about that he was really black, and Tommy had married a black woman, and, you know, he sort of really related to that world, and in a strange way, even though, you know, Tommy's of a mixed background himself, he's Chinese and Scottish. So it's just a fascinating piece. And so then, following up, after that piece came out, when all the news was starting to break about, the pharmaceutical use of drugs that Michael Jackson was doing, and it's still sort of coming out, Tommy wrote another piece, about, you know, what a lot of people in our community are kind of saying, you know, Michael Jackson, you know, would have been better off if he used marijuana and didn't get so hooked on all these opiates. And so Tommy wrote a piece about that as well. So it's been really nice to hear what Tommy has to say about Michael Jackson, coming from a real sort of left field perspective.
Yeah, and all those blogs are up in the blog section of celebstoner.com, so you can read all about it. It's a fascinating story. I really, really enjoyed it.
Actually, in the second piece that Tommy did, you know, we're talking about, you know, kind of pharmaceuticals. I guess, you know, there was an organization called the Pain Relief Network. They responded with a comment saying, you know, that, you know, you're wrong, that, you know, pharmaceuticals are good in certain cases for certain people. And Tommy wrote back saying, you know, he wrote back a comment saying that, you know, he could agree to that to some extent, but, you know, he really stands, you know, for a holistic type of healing, and, you know, marijuana is part of that holistic healing, and that he doesn't really believe in, you know, taking chemicals and pharmaceuticals into your system. So, you know, so it's an interesting back and forth going there if you want to check it out up at Celeb Stoner.
Yeah. You know, pharmaceutical, pain relievers, I think also are, you know, good in short-term circumstances, but when you're talking a long-term circumstance like this, you know, medical marijuana is probably superior.
The problem with opiates is that, you know, I just really, you know, I just think it's just terrible when people use opiates recreationally. I mean, obviously there's heroin and stuff like that, but the pharmaceuticals that people have been using, Vicodin and all these Demerol and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, a lot of people, sometimes they start with an injury and then they kind of can't get off it, and then it's something that they do regularly. And then other people, like OxyContin, they use it to party. You know, it's a bad idea.
Yeah. Another celebrity news that we've got to get out here is the Emmy Awards. 30 Rock came in with the most nominations, but I'm sure there's some Celeb Stoner news in there in the Emmys somewhere.
Well, we have 3 top Celeb Stoners are nominated. Pretty much each year we have sort of about that number. Bill Maher is nominated again for Real Time in the variety category. He's got good competition. He's up against The Daily Show, Colbert, Letterman, and SNL. Most likely he won't win. In a real horse race of Celeb Stoners going up against each other, which I think is maybe a first. In the category for Best Actress in a Comedy Series, we have Sarah Silverman for the Sarah Silverman Program, and of course Mary Louise Parker for Weed. She's up every year. So that'll be an interesting one. We're starting a poll on the site for people to decide who they would want to, you know, vote for in that category. And of course Tina Fey is up as well, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, let's see, who else do we have? Christina Applegate and Toni Collette. So that's a really good category too. And Weeds, again, once again, is up as the best comedy series. So, we'll see what happens. Usually Weeds doesn't win. Weeds is off to a pretty good season so far this year with a focus on Nancy's baby and how she's going to deal with that, and the sort of the paranoia that's kind of involved with her husband, her soon-to-be husband, or Esteban, who is the mayor of Tijuana and the drug baron down there. So it's been an interesting sort of direction, and as well, there's been a storyline, a medical marijuana club, which Nancy's oldest son Silas has started. So Weeds keeps going on in an interesting direction. So we'll see who wins, but hopefully one of our celeb stoners takes the prize.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. We'll keep an eye on that. Other news in music, we're looking at the Blazed and Confused tour, which is of particular note to me. I'll be there at the concert today in Portland, Oregon, getting backstage with the guys from Slightly Stupid. But tell us a little bit more about the tour and other musical news if you've got some.
Well, it's a great tour. I mean, we're kind of we've described it here at Celeb Stoner as the the stoniest tour of the summer. I mean, not only is it Slightly Stupid, it's Slightly Stupid, Snoop Dogg, and Stephen Marley plus Mickey Avalon. You can't get three more. I mean, obviously maybe throw the Cottonmouth Kings and Cypress Hill and Redman and Method Man, and you really have a festival. Kind of like a Lollapalooza tour. Put that all together. Or the so-called old school Smoking Grooves tour that Cypress Hill used to do, then you really have something going on. And maybe somebody will do that. Interestingly, this summer, sort of the end of the traveling extravaganzas, such as Lollapalooza. The only one that's still rolling around the country is the Warped Tour, which is kind of amazing. I mean, they were all pretty much gone. Lollapalooza, is sort of localized in Chicago now. Ozfest is over. There's one tour called the Rock of the Bells. That's a hip-hop tour that's going around. So we did a list on the website of what we call the top 13 smoking summer tours. And that, of course, is topped by Blazed and Confused. There's a couple of, there's a tour called Footprints in Hip Hop that's going around with Method Man, Redman, and Ghostface Killer. So that's kind of like a Wu-Tang tour. There's the Gratitude Cafe tour with Jason Mraz, G-Love and Special Sauce, and Kanan, which is a really fun tour. There's the Unity tour, which came through New York recently, 311, Ziggy Marley, and the Expendables. I mean, as I just mentioned, the Warped Tour, which has, over 200 bands. It's amazing. Rock the Bells is Cypress Hill, Nas, Ice Cube, Damian Marley, The Roots, Common, Busta Rhymes, Big Boy, EPMD, House of Pain, and more. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a knockout. That's coming through New York this weekend. Willie Nelson's on tour. Fish is doing some summer touring. Cottonmouth Kings have a summer tour. Green Day are on tour. Dave Matthews on tour. And the Allman Brothers kick off a tour in August, and even the Dark Horse tour, which got a negative comment from a couple of people at Celeb Stoner asking, why are we listing Nickelback, Hinder, Papa Roach, and Saving Abel as a good tour? Well, I don't know. Back in the day when I first met Nickelback, they smoked a lot of pot. And, hey, Papa Roach, come on.
Yeah, really.
That's a great name. So it's a fun, it's a fun summer for touring. Get out there and see some music. Support stoner music. Especially on these tours. All of these tours have sort of a stoner sensibility running through them. Some of them a little bit more open, like Blazed and Confused, and others just, you just have to sort of know that a guy like Jason Mraz is a smoker too, and so it all kind of fits. Go out there, smoke a little bit. Be careful when you're at these venues. Don't get caught, don't get busted.
Yeah, that's right. And before we let you go, how's the progress going on your new book?
Very exciting. We're working on Reefer Movie Madness, the Ultimate Stoner Film Guide. Basically just watching a lot of movies. The book's coming out next April, so we're kind of, working towards our deadline. We've sort of completed about half the book. We're doing it in kind of order, and the first big chunk of the book is comedies, and then the rest of the book is dramas, action, sports, documentaries, musical, sci-fi, fantasy, things like that. Plus, in addition to just doing reviews of over 420 movies, we're doing interviews and sidebars listing the top 5 of this and the top 10 of that. So, me and Shirley Halpern, my co-author, who I wrote Pot Culture with, are putting our heads together. We're having a great time.
Well, Steve Bloom joins us here every other Friday from celebstoner.com, which is the web's #1 source for celebrity cannabis news. Check it out, celebstoner.com, and look forward to Steve's book coming out this April. Pot Culture, the book is still out as well, and you'll hear the ad for that right now. Thanks, Steve.
Appreciate it so much, Rush. Thanks a lot.
Cannabis, pot,
Just say no.
No matter what you call it, it's a huge part of popular culture.
Where'd you learn that, Cheech? Drug school.
You don't need weed school. You just need a copy of the new book, Pot Culture, the A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life.
Hey, this is great, man.
Even if you never smoked marijuana.
I never used marijuana. Sorry.
Don't think you smoked marijuana.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two and didn't inhale.
Or you used to smoke marijuana.
I inhaled frequently. That was the point.
Pot Culture by former High Times editor Steve Bloom and Shirley Halperin will answer every question you ever had about marijuana culture.
Has that marijuana made it back up here yet?
Check out Pot Culture, the A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life at Amazon.com or visit potculturebook.com today.
Too bad, man. I just stopped smoking yesterday.
The battle to end adult marijuana prohibition can sometimes seem endlessly frustrating and impossible to overcome. One way we bond as a community and draw strength to continue is by rejuvenating our spirit through art and music. The Marijuana Music Awards exist to recognize those sonic artists in all genres of music who feature a ganja-friendly message to motivate and inspire all the cannabis community. Our daily Toker tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, feature the finest in blues, rock, jazz, hip-hop, rap, reggae, country, bluegrass, and dance music to enhance that 420 feeling and refresh all you stashers for another day on the front lines of the drug war. Enjoy this cut from MarijuanaMusicAwards.com and visit our blog at stash.normal.org to learn how you can vote for your favorites and enter your Toker tunes in the 2009 Marijuana Music Awards. Well, folks, this is the part where I'd normally be reading something written by Tam from the Marijuana Music Awards to introduce our daily Toker tune for It's a Wrap on Friday. But since I have to get out early to get to the Blazed and Confused tour, and it's not even, 5 in the morning in Australia as I record this, it's not likely I'm going to get a post from Tam in time in order to do so. So I bring to you a tune I found from an various artist album, so I'm not exactly sure who recorded this, but it's a song called Weed Man. And it opens up a subject that I'd like to discuss here on the Stash. And that is, a lot of this music, a lot of this Stash music, especially when we start talking about the rap genre, is going to use some language that some people find very offensive. And I'm speaking particularly here about the dreaded N-word, which I hate having to say N-word. It makes me feel like a child. But because so many people take offense to it, I don't want to, I don't want to offend anyone. But in music, I think it's kind of a different animal. It's more of a casual community sort of thing. And I just don't know. I'm on the fence about this as to whether or not here at the Daily Audio Stash, we ought to be playing songs that use that word a lot. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play this song, which does use that word a lot. And if you don't like it, please fast forward the podcast to the next 4 minutes or so to get past it. And let's begin this discussion. Send me an email at stash@normal.org and let me know what you think about the N-word in rap songs and whether or not we should play those songs here on the Stash. Here you go. Here is the song called Weed Man. And if anyone out there knows who the artist is, please let me know and I'll give them proper credit.
You a fool for this one. Like goddamn fool. Niggas got what we do, man. Like this shit. Hit that shit. It's that Bay life, man. That Bay living, man. That Bay sword, yeah. 707 Golden Gate. Go State shit. If I ain't got weed, I I know my nigga do. You probably heard I smoke a lot, man, that shit is true. We cannabis cuz it's natural born thinking it. Don't ever leave me a blunt, cause I'ma blaze it. I got a sickness, addicted to the pot. Feeling like a hippie chilling up at Woodstock. I pick a good spot, I make the hood hot. Dog, I don't wanna quit, even if I could stop. Choking on train wreck, blowing on some granddad. 420 scholarship, I'm a college grad. Stuffing it in his ass, splitting cigars open. Never say no to drugs, live by the soul. Weed, man, my sack is running pretty low. Take marijuana plants everywhere, I got a quota weed, man. I'll meet you at the same spot. We always looking for the smoking Mary Jane. I got a quota weed, man. We burning up the whole tree. Make a phone call, buy another OG. I got a quota weed, man. Tell him I need it delivered. Mixing up THC with the liquor. Never say no. I'm at the liquor store buying cases of blunts, bottles of Remy XO. Look at my lighter, fertilizing my plants in the back. Doing it gigantic, my nigga, we roll them super fat. Burning my buds, I'm always at the cannabis club. They need to legalize it, I'm demanding the judge. It's from the earth, nobody ever died from weed. Gotta call the Zay man to supply my needs, I'm so relieved. The bomb got me sprung for show. Searching for doobies and roaches cause my funds are low. It's no joke, the chronic is a part of my life. Gotta keep an eye on the pigs, they parked on the right. We drive past, hoping they don't spot my tag. Inspired registration, praying that them lights don't flash. M-Dash, aka Smokey the Giant. Marijuana stockholder plus a number one. I got a quota weed, man. My sack is running pretty low. Take marijuana plants everywhere, I got a quota weed, man. I'll meet you at the same spot. We always looking for the smoking Mary Jane. I got a quota weed, man. We burning up the whole tree. Make a phone call, buy another OG. I got a quota weed, man. Tell him I need it delivered. Mixing up THC with the liquor. I got a quota weed, man. My sack is running pretty low. Take marijuana plants everywhere, I got a quota weed, man. I'll meet you at the same spot. We always looking for the smoking Mary Jane. I got a quota weed, man. We burning up the whole tree. Make a phone call, buy another OG. I got a quota weed, man. Tell him I need it delivered. Mixing up THC with the liquor.
Hi, this is Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of NORML. We are the oldest, largest, and best-known marijuana law reform organization in America, and it's all because of your support. Take some time to join NORML at www.norml.org. Your membership supports this podcast, our websites, our policy research and analysis, and our annual conferences. Changing marijuana laws is a grassroots effort, and it starts with you, the stakeholder. Join NORML today and add your voice to the millions of cannabis consumers who demand equality with our beer-drinking friends.
The most devastating effect of the war on marijuana is that it is a war on everyday people like you and me. All week we speak to the doctors, scientists, celebrities, and politicians who make up the professionals fighting for cannabis liberty, but we never forget about the tens of millions who use cannabis, the millions who need medical access to cannabis, the hundreds of thousands arrested every year for cannabis, and tens of thousands imprisoned under our marijuana laws. At NORML, we are the Cannabis Consumers Lobby, and we take this opportunity to share the experiences of our cannabis community. We're going now to Daytona Beach, Florida, where we're going to be speaking with Danny Breeden, who's an author who's written a new book called Marijuana, Prison or Profit. And Danny, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
So this book, Marijuana, Prison or Profit, what is the basic gist of the book? What are you trying to get across to your readers?
Well, I spent 4.5 years in a federal halfway house as a guard, and I had the opportunity to speak with some of the best marijuana cultivators. Unfortunately, they weren't completely successful, or they wouldn't be locked up. I I was just able to get some candid interviews with them, and I did a compilation of their stories and made it into a fictional account of one family and their trials and tribulations as they go through the sometimes hard path of being a pot grower. People think it's, you run out and throw a seed in the ground and it grows, but there's a whole lot more to it than that. There's a lot of danger. There's a lot of money for some of them, and some of them it's prison. But for the most part, people that I interviewed were just your average Joe types. They just they got down on their luck, and they couldn't see any way out of their problems, so they decided to choose a life of crime. But they didn't want to, like steal from somebody or rob a bank. They had a certain moral center, and they saw nothing wrong with growing a wild plant and selling it to people who wanted it. Unfortunately, they didn't pay taxes on it directly, and that kind of upset the federal government.
Yeah. I think a lot of those growers, though, would like to be able to pay taxes to the federal government. Does your book talk anything about the prohibition of marijuana being why they're into this, and does it make any stand on whether or not it should be legal?
Well, it's mostly a human interest kind of thing. It'll tell you how everything you need to know how to grow marijuana and how to not go to jail, based on the mistakes that my prisoners made. It's hard to summarize it other than it's an enjoyable read, and some of the facts I drew from my own family's experience. I had an uncle and a cousin who had the misfortune of going to the federal system for growing pot. So I had a little first-hand information there, family-wise.
Yeah.
But it shows that, pot growers are not monsters. For the most part, they could be your next-door neighbor. And most pot growers are not what I would even classify as criminals, even though I've been in law enforcement and correction. A criminal is someone who's, in my way of thinking, is out to do harm. Pot growers, they're just trying to make a living. My in-laws, they're dead now, but they were old, but they were actually encouraged to grow pot, hemp, rather, back during World War I.
Yeah.
And,
well, now you say you've worked in corrections for a long time. How is your attitude about the pot growers? And you saying they're not criminals, they're not trying to hurt people. Is that an attitude that's shared a lot by the people that work in corrections, just the day-to-day grunt workers, the day-to-day guards and such? Or is your opinion kind of an outlier, kind of a strange opinion for your field?
No, I think not. If you deal with real criminals, I'm talking about child molesters, rapists, murderers, it's a different mindset than someone that's just trying to feed his family. Correctional officers have a very low regard for certain types of criminals. And certain types of criminals they understand, because we're all one mistake away from being locked up if you ever dealt with the federal government at all.
Yeah.
And that's why my book is a work of fiction per se, because I couldn't use actual names, but the events all took place. And it's an enjoyable read as far as the story goes, but it's also educational, and hopefully someone that's, not into marijuana could possibly get some insight as to why someone might pursue this as a vocation.
Okay. Now, aside from, being in corrections and meeting a lot of these people who are involved with the marijuana grows, was there any personal reason of your own that made you want to write this book?
Personally, I've smoked marijuana. I'll be honest with you. I can't do it now. I'm a licensed security officer through the state of Florida, and we're subject to random urine tests. If it wasn't for that, I've got a bad back, and I would smoke it every day if I could to kill the back pain.
Now
we don't have medical marijuana. I can't do it.
Now there is a group now that is pushing to get an initiative on the ballot in Florida for medical marijuana. They're called People United for Medical Marijuana at PUFMM.org, I believe. So I hope that happens for you sometime soon. I'd hate to have you suffer with your bad back when you really don't need to. Looking at the people that you were writing about in this book, the marijuana growers, did you find that there was a certain type of person who got into marijuana growing, or was everyone's story vastly different?
Actually, it was usually like not retired, but an out-of-work construction worker or coal miner who's you got to remember this is, most of my prisoners came from Appalachia.
Okay.
So they've been in a state of recession a long time before the country. And I think you're going to see, if they don't get marijuana legalized soon, you're going to see a bigger boom in the illegal activity of growing of it because there's a demand for it. And, in Appalachia, it's not your organized crime type thing. It's, you know, it's your good old boys, you know, growing it out in the backwoods type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, like I say, most of the profits stay in the community, if not all. There might be an occasional luxury item, but for the most part, these are just people trying to feed their families and keep from losing their homes and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to judge someone because if it comes down to feeding my family, I don't know what I would do, you know.
Right.
I've always been on the right side of the law, but of course my kids have never went hungry yet, you know.
Yeah, good point. Well, looking at this from your perspective as someone who's worked in corrections, one of the things that we bring up about marijuana prohibition is that so many people get arrested for it, and this kind of creates a revolving door, and it creates the customers, if you will, for the corrections industry. Do you worry that legalization of marijuana would lead to less prisoners and therefore less jobs for corrections people?
Now, you always have criminals.
Yeah.
Like I say, we still have politicians.
Well put. Well put.
As a matter of fact, I've guarded a senator as one of my prisoners. I can't name a name, but
sure.
Now the federal government will lock up anybody that doesn't pay their taxes.
Right.
You know, they don't discriminate. They're very fair about locking people up. So there'll never be a shortage of prisoners.
Okay.
But there should be a shortage of marijuana prisoners, nonviolent offenders. They shouldn't even be locked up. At most, they should be put on home confinement or nothing. You know, I mean, it's not like they're out here putting a gun to people's head to buy this stuff.
Right.
And from all my research, I could not find any negative aspects to it. I mean, you know, it's not addictive any more than biting your fingernail. And there's more pluses than minuses.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm a smoker now, so they want to make something against the law. That's what they should do. Maybe I can quit then.
Maybe. So when you look at, the effect that marijuana has on the people that use it and compare it to something like alcohol, what's the difference from a correctional point of view?
Well, I used to bounce a little bit in my younger days at a club, and the nights that we had, you good old redneck beer drinkers in, we would have fights. The nights that we had pot smokers in, the only thing we would do would be run out of chips, and they wouldn't play the music louder.
Yeah.
And my job was real easy then.
Yeah, I guess so. You know, I've heard the same thing from police officers up in Seattle at the Hemp Fest there. They have about 150,000 pot smokers that show up, and I came up to a couple of the officers and I asked them, would you rather work Hemp Fest or would you rather work a Seahawks game at Quest Field? And they said hands down they'd rather work Hemp Fest. It's a lot easier to deal with.
Yeah, well, as a deputy sheriff, I pulled a couple of dead bodies out of drunk driver wrecks, head-on collision things.
Mm-hmm.
And I've yet to see a fatality of a pot smoker going 15 miles an hour.
Very well put. Well, I want to thank you, Danny Breeden, for joining us here on The Stash. The book is Marijuana, Prison, or Profit. Is there a way our listeners can get a copy of that book online? Can they order it?
As a matter of fact, if they go to my website, marijuanaprisonerprofit.com, I've set it up as a free download. It's free to the public.
Oh, well, what a great service you're doing there. That's fantastic.
I just feel it's something that, just give the general public a little bit of the insight that I've got working with these people. You know, like I say, they're not monsters. They're just same as us, just fell on hard times and maybe made a wrong decision, or maybe they were just ahead of their time. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, this is a great news to hear from you. I know so many of us on our side in the marijuana community, we have this adversarial relationship with police that we shouldn't have to have. We should be left alone, like our beer drinking friends and have the freedom to pursue this if we need to. And, your book, Marijuana Prisoner Profit, available at marijuanaprisonerprofit.com, I think goes a long way toward helping people understand that, because it's not coming from me, it's coming from you, somebody who's, outside of it and working, in correction. So I really want to thank you, Danny, for doing what you've done.
Well, I appreciate your time, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. We leave you today with big thanks for an exciting week here at the NORML Daily Audio Stash. We are psyched about starting the NORML show live on CBS streaming radio Saturday nights 9 to 11 Eastern Time, beginning this Labor Day weekend. And it wouldn't have been possible without the fantastic support of all the stashers out there who make the Daily Audio Stash podcast the most popular marijuana news and information podcast on the net. Thank you so much, loyal stashers. I couldn't do it without you. We'll be back next week with more news and interviews you can use, including my backstage exclusive interview with the band Slightly Stupid and some ambiance recordings from the backstage area. I'm sure it will be very interesting. Good thing we've got digital recorders so I can remember it all. Also, we'll have photos and videos available as well, so stay tuned for that. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.